Trump's dizzying series of moves have left the world perplexed. Take May 23rd, for instance. Trump was in full warrior mode, delivering for abrupt blows, each striking at a critical juncture. These actions threw the global landscape into a whirlwind, instantly igniting chaos. First blow, cutting deep into Harvard, a top global university with 172 Nobel laureates and 8 US presidents among its alumni, is a golden emblem of American education, attracting talent worldwide. Beyond tuition fees, the US has cultivated legions of pro-American scholars through Harvard, many of whom stay to fuel America's tech and cultural growth. But Trump, furious that Harvard faculty and students leaned toward Palestine on certain issues and refused to relent, first slashed its federal funding. When that failed to sting, he unleashed a nuclear option, banning international students, even forcing current ones to transfer immediately. This struck at the heart of Harvard's existence. Imagine paying tuition, only to be expelled mid-semester. Who would tolerate such arbitrary cruelty? For America, the brain drain will cripple innovation. Tech giants will scramble to replace the talent pool Trump just chased away. This isn't defeating an enemy, it's shooting oneself in the foot. Second blow, bludgeoning Apple. Trump ordered Apple to relocate Foxconn assembly lines to the US, claiming it would create screw-tightening jobs for rednecks. But here's the catch. Apple, a tech titan, needs engineers, not just laborers. As CEO Tim Cook once quipped, in the US, we can't fill a single room with engineers. In China, they'd fill stadiums. Apple's China presence thrives not on cheap labor, but on supply chain efficiency, economies of scale, infrastructure, and talent advantages America lacks. Relocating assembly lines alone would hike iPhone prices by 25%, Trump's threat to slap a 25% tariff notwithstanding. Apple's calculus is simple. Even a 20% tariff beats the costs of moving higher production expenses, inevitable sales drops from price hikes, and risks of Chinese retaliation. Worse, Trump would likely demand upstream and downstream industries follow, doubling prices and killing competitiveness. Apple will likely stall, lobby, or feign compliance while dragging its feet until Trump leaves office. And let's not forget Trump's potential side gambit, dumping Apple stocks and buying put options beforehand, raking in billions as the stock tanks. A neat profit from chaos, indeed. Third blow. Blasting the EU. Trump announced a 50% tariff on all EU goods starting June 1st, with exemptions only for products made in the US. The EU is reeling. In a US-EU showdown, the EU is at a disadvantage. Militarily, it's shackled by NATO and US military bases. Economically, it relies on American tech ecosystems. And commercially, the US is the EU's largest export market, 531.6 billion euros in EU exports to the US in 2024, versus 333.4 billion euros in US exports to the EU, a 198.2 billion. Trump's balance obsession reeks of hypocrisy. For the dollar to remain a global currency, the US must run trade deficits, yet Trump wants to eliminate them, a contradiction known as the Triffin dilemma. To balance trade, America would have to abandon dollar hegemony, a non-starter for Wall Street. Meanwhile, slashing deficits would starve the world of dollars, collapsing the currency's utility. A US-EU trade war is mutually assured destruction. Their economies are complementary. America has tech, energy, and agriculture. The EU has luxury goods, cars, and machinery. The EU could retaliate, but many leaders, compromised by US surveillance or dual citizenship, think the Wang Jingwen incident lack the spine to resist. It's a lose-lose, but Trump cares only about appearing to protect American jobs, heedless of the long-term carnage. Moreover, the EU itself faces significant issues. Its decision-making mechanisms are overly inefficient, with 27 members each pursuing their own agendas like a disjointed mob. High taxes in Europe have also caused a massive exodus of elites overseas. The fourth blow targeted the National Security Council (NSC). On May 23 local time, Reuters reported that dozens of White House NSC staff suddenly received emails ordering them to leave their posts within an hour, with personal items and compensation handled by the White House office. Trump is aggressively downsizing the NSC, reducing its size from over 300 to fewer than 50 personnel while drastically curbing its authority. Why? partly because the NSC had grown to powerful over decades and needed restructuring, partly because Trump, self-proclaimed as a peace president, believes many there are fixated on conflicts like the Russia-Ukraine war, provoking tensions, and with tight government finances, he refuses to fund idle hands. Most crucially, Trump aims to entrench himself as a super president by centralizing control over US domestic and foreign policies, redistributing NSC powers to the State Department, White House office, and Pentagon. Trump's series of Pinduoduo-style slash-and-burn moves appear ferocious, but what's the outcome? On the surface, victory seems near, yet it remains perpetually out of reach. Take Harvard. While it may struggle short-term, America risks losing global talent attraction long-term. How will it sustain technological hegemony? Apple is unlikely to yield easily, even if forced to relocate. Cost hikes will raise prices, alienate consumers, weaken its competitiveness, and harm the US economy. A US-EU trade war would be mutually destructive, with America bearing significant costs. While dismantling the NSC may seem to boost short-term policy efficiency, it inflicts systemic damage on US national security governance. Yet, from another angle, Trump's actions are reshaping global dynamics. The EU, for instance, faces a pivotal choice. If it musters political wisdom to shed outdated mindsets and populist constraints and ally with China, the landscape could transform. China has already won the trade war, shattering the myth of US technological and trade invincibility. In the India-Pakistan conflict, China's J-10C fighters achieved a crushing victory, signaling China's military ascendancy, while the US tacitly withdrew from the Red Sea after losing 3 drones to the Houthis, negotiating a truce. Astute Europeans see America's decline and China's rapid, comprehensive rise a prime moment to choose sides. Clinging to the US guarantees no future. Drawing closer to China could shield the EU from further US exploitation and even empower it to outcompete America globally. The EU still holds bargaining chips in cooperation with China, such as lithography machines and Airbus. While Huawei's nuclear project has made breakthroughs, it still lags behind ASML in equipment debugging and yield rates, requiring time to improve. China's large aircraft program has advanced, but production capacity remains limited, with an incomplete product line and no commercialized domestic civil aviation engines. Opportunities for the EU, but fleeting. In a few years, once China masters lithography, scales C919 production, and commercializes its engines, the EU's advantages will vanish. Negotiating now could secure favorable terms for the EU. China's huge, rapidly growing market still favors European luxury goods, tourism, agricultural products, and internal combustion engine vehicles. Even if electric vehicles dominate, a remaining 20 to 30% market share for fuel-powered cars would still be a massive opportunity for Europe. As China reshapes global supply chains and adjusts division of labor, the EU risks being outpaced by Japan, South Korea, and ASEAN if it delays. Missing this chance could relegate the EU to irrelevance compared to ASEAN in decades, but allying with China to confront the US could elevate it to parity with America. Joining forces with China against the US need not exact heavy costs. A few strategic moves could force America to retreat. For example, signing a China-EU investment agreement or developing EUV lithography machines without US technology. Thanks to Trump's efforts, China-EU relations are warming. Dutch Foreign Minister Wopke Hoekstra visited China on May 21 to 22 at Wang Yi's invitation, a sign of China's active diplomacy to win over the EU. In this era of centennial upheaval, nations must choose sides between China and the US, a decision that will define their role in the community of shared future for mankind and global affairs. While cautiously optimistic about China-EU ties, their progress owes partly to Trump's assistance. China's strategy: first, fuel US-EU tensions. Second, with the EU, the harder America strikes the EU, the easier it is for China to gain European cooperation. Thus, we hope Trump's clumsy blows hit harder, forcing the EU to confront reality. If America wins against the EU, it may at least stand still for years, but Trump must redouble efforts to win decisively. Let's not forget, Europe's post-World War II prosperity relied on US aid. Now that America is in crisis, Trump sees EU bloodletting as justified. With the US $37 trillion in debt, Trump has no retreat. Millions of working-class Americans await his triumph, and he must bleed the EU, then Japan and South Korea, to sustain US interest groups addicted to exploitation. Finally, a word to Trump: do not relent. With fewer than 1,340 days left in office, your great self-destruction project has only just begun. Dismantling allies requires ruthless efficiency. Castrating America demands severing its hegemonic roots.